Okay, so the Axis have won the game with 13 victory points. They retained all 5 of their victory cities with which they started the game. They achieved Manila. Well, they started the game in this game with Manila, Hong Kong, and Paris, but they kept those. They took Moscow and Leningrad. And then they had 3 victory conditions. The Japanese Empire victory condition. Japan needed a raw IPC score of 52. It finished the game with 67. It achieved the World Oil 1 victory condition of controlling at least 4 oil territories. They actually have 5 because Germany took back Romania and Japan held Java against the last turn Aussie assault. So they hold Romania, Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and Celebes for 5. Obviously, they don't have World Oil 2 because they would need 2 more for that. Germany never tried for the Atlantic Wall. Italy did have the Mediterranean point, but the UK took it back in the last turn and killed the, rather improbably actually, got very, very lucky with the dice rolls and killed the Italian Navy so that they couldn't retake the island. The resources they were not able to get, they held 2 of them at the end of the game, both Japanese, Siberia and Manchuria. The Axis did get the South Asia point because England was unable to liberate Burma on the last turn. By the end of the game, the Japanese never really had a chance at the China point, so they never bothered. Horn of Africa was never in the equation. New Rome was never in the equation because the Allies did a very good job of defending Egypt. And the Pacific Island one, Japan sort of let that go. They actually finished the game with 3 of the 4 islands they needed for this, but there wasn't much of a chance of getting the rest of them given where their transports were located on the board. But they still win the game with 13 victory points. Remember, they only need 12. So in terms of analysis of the game situation, I can say that I'm pretty happy with the way that I played the Germans. I was very sort of laser focused on getting towards Russia, and I think what I've found actually in playing the BBR version of Axis and Allies is that if Germany really focuses on driving towards Russia, there's very little Russia can do about it. I've found that as much as you think you need for Russia to defend Moscow, it's always way more. Especially if Germany has tanks. And actually, in the last 2 games I've put online, the German heavy tank technology made a massive difference. So I'm very, very happy with the way I played Germany. I thought they defended quite well against the Allied onslaught in France, although again, I don't think I played the Allies very well. I left their naval forces chronically underdefended and put them in very vulnerable positions in a couple of very key points in the game. I think the German attack on the Allied naval elements in the English Channel was a huge turning point for the game because they couldn't reinforce the gains that they had made in Normandy, Bordeaux, and Holland, Belgium. The American Navy in '93 was underdefended. I probably should have spent a little bit more money in the Atlantic to shore up that navy so that the Italians and the Germans could not sink it. So that was a major boo-boo on my part, I think. And I think it made the German game a lot simpler. Although, as I said, they did defend themselves well even when the Allies were making gains in Normandy and southern France. Italy, I think, did just fine. I think taking a shot at the island thing was certainly something that they tried to do. So that was I guess okay. And again, they survived as long as they needed to, and there was never really any serious danger of Italy falling, given the defensive posturing of the Axis in southern Italy. In the Pacific, I think Japan did what they needed to do. They kind of, again, late in the game, they kind of gave up on the idea of getting the China point and really focused on holding the Southeast Asia point, which they were able to do fairly easily, I think. They also held the Philippines fairly well and ended up, anyway, holding the oil areas fairly well. There's a lot of back and forth in Burma, although ultimately the Japanese were able to defend it, which sort of spelled death for the Allied chances of getting anything going. I think probably the biggest mistake in the game in terms of how I played the Allies was how I played the Americans in the Pacific. They were largely ineffective. And there's some nifty tricks you can use with the Japanese in terms of blockers, because the constant danger of the Allied presence in the Pacific, of course, is that Japan is going to fall. And given how much money it has to spend in Asia, it often doesn't defend itself very well at home. But I mean, I think Japan, in terms of the way it moved its navy around, was very effective in neutralizing the American threat. Even with, I mean, that's a pretty substantial navy that we're looking at here in C-Zone 25. But I mean, again, they really couldn't go anywhere or do anything. In future games, maybe you build a port in Midway so that they have to protect two areas here. There's more ways in. Or three areas, actually, because if there's a port in Midway, they can go around this way and get into that. So that's maybe an option for future games, is the Americans taking Midway and building a port there right away and reinforcing the hell out of it. The Aussies, again, were largely ineffective for most of the game. The Japanese did a really, really good job at neutralizing them. There were a couple of real miracle sea battles. One against the Japanese here, where the sub defended somehow against an overwhelming amount of forces that were poured against it. And then the Aussies defending with their transport against that very same sub was highly improbable. Now, it ended up not making much of a difference because Germany took back Romania for the oil thing, but there was a chance that the Aussies could have played spoiler here by trying to take back some of the Dutch islands and get some of the oil back. This one was unfortunate. Again, 2 units against 1 unit, and Japan just defended. Dice were a factor in the game, but the interesting thing is, as horrible as the dice rolls were, they were horrible on both sides. So I think in the end it ended up being fairly fair. I don't think either team really got screwed by the dice, or we could say both teams got screwed by the dice, so it evens out in the wash. So anyway, that was a really interesting game. I really like the 1942 setup. I think it's a fascinating sort of almost a mini game, because again, it's so fast. 5 turns is nothing, and it doesn't take much to get through that. So that was a lot of fun to play. I don't know what I'm going to play next. I'll see if I have an opponent. It's always tough to play with yourself. That sounded a little dirty, but play against yourself, play a solo match. Because again, it's hard to surprise yourself with moves. So I'm looking forward maybe to having an opponent in the future. But again, obviously the world in which we live right now, the COVID world, it makes that a little bit difficult. So anyway, this was a lot of fun. And so signing off from the bar, I'm Sergeant Mercy, and I've really enjoyed putting this series of videos together. So until next time, thanks very much.